What is up, guys, and welcome to this special episode of Guarani Vision. Welcome to the first of our World Cup qualifier preview shows of the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are, as always, my three great co-hosts. And guys, it's finally here. You know, we finally have reached the date. Well, we're almost there at least. The World Cup qualifiers are back, and Paraguay, as we are going to be talking about within the next couple of minutes, are going to start off a new dream to go to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. If they do so, they will qualify to their first World Cup in 12 years. Certainly a lot of expectation is built on this team. You know, maybe there are some people that are divided in any case, but you know, we'll get straight into it. I mean, let's go all the way to the mother country, to the place that will be home to the first game that Paraguay has to play. We go to Federico Perez. Fede, how are you, man? How are you feeling just mere hours away from the start of a new qualifying process?
Anxious, very anxious. Hi, everybody. Hi, Roberto, Maria, Ralph. Well, hi, crew. Special edition. Today is special because we every minute, I think we're more anxious about what's going to happen this week, what's coming up. We'll be talking about what happens with Albi-Roja, their training, their practices. Finally, we have the whole crew. Trying to bring everyone closer to our beloved Paraguay in English also through this spot. Thankfully, on the preview, almost everyone is healthy in our squad. We have good news on that topic. You know, our goalkeeper, he's been there waiting for this match also. He's been taking care of his knee. He's had that trouble. So thankfully, apparently he's going to make it. And looking forward to seeing how the team works as a whole, as a team itself, and also to see some players individually. I believe some have grown these last couple of months, like Cubas, Richard Sanchez. Some have even been champions lately. Some have changed teams. So we'll see where our players really stand up. The new players also are going to be watched closely, I believe. Some even coming back to this squad for a certain revenge, maybe. The Romero brothers, you know, Sanabria, that was very close last time. Bobadilla, you know, we have a whole bunch of stories. We got it all. I have a Qatar dreams at night. After missing these two last World Cups, we must have learned from the past experience, and hopefully we get this one.
Absolutely. And, you know, going to Maria next, I mean, you know, it almost feels like many people don't want to support Albi-Roja because of obviously past failures. And, you know, it's like, oh, why should we support this national team? But it all changes once game day comes. They like all of a sudden, like they just become Albi-Roja fans and they have their shirts like all of us are doing. But how are you feeling heading into, you know, just less than 48 hours as we're recording for their first game?
I'm actually excited. I think that people that are being negative about the team are just not giving it a chance yet. Yeah, and we still have such a long time to go to actually qualify. It's still the first few games, so there's not a lot to worry about. I do think that we should be worrying about getting the team together, having the players feel each other out. This is what the first few games are for, and I'm just excited. I'm happy that we're finally at this stage, even throughout COVID. Although it's a little too early, in my opinion, to start the whole tournament, but it is what it is. Everyone's excited for it, and I think it's something that we needed. And even though, like you said, Roberto, there's people that don't want to support the Albi-Roja. At the end of the day, it's your team, it's your country. You're going to go for it no matter what. So I'm very happy. I'm looking forward to 2 straight wins, if not 4 possible. So yeah, I'm waiting to see. I'm hoping for the best.
Now, obviously going to Ralph, because he's kind of, well, we would say he is an adopted Paraguayan, but given his roots, he is also from England. So, you know, I want to ask you, certainly as someone that maybe is a bit neutral, you would say. I mean, obviously you have your Paraguayan blood in you, but, you know, how are you feeling heading into a new qualifying process with a new generation of players that are ready to break out and make a statement in these games?
Well, to be honest, Roberto, at first, I didn't want to get my hopes up. I was thinking maybe we're not sure what's going to happen. You know, it's a new team. There's lots of changes. But as this week went on, I started kind of getting that excitement, getting that buzz. We were trying to find out today what team did Berizzo put up in training. We're hearing about some of the injuries Peru have, so we're thinking, okay, maybe we have a chance. We're just talking now about maybe it rains on Thursday in Asunción. Does that help us? So all of these things start giving you that feeling and that interest. And to be honest, I love following Paraguay. I mean, I had torn loyalties in 2006 because I went to England against Paraguay, and that day for sure I wanted England to win. So that was the test when I found out, which one is the one I want more. For sure it's England, but I always get excited with World Cup qualifiers, and especially there's so many rivalries and there's so many stories we can tell about some of these players, some of these teams, even the coaches facing off against each other. So I think it's going to be really exciting.
I agree. I mean, these qualifiers, as all of us know, are the toughest, I would say. I think all of the teams are out there to cause a big fight, to cause a surprise, even the lesser teams. I think the unpredictability that we've been accustomed to is something that could favor us, or it could also hurt us. So again, I think I agree. I think we all have to feel excited about this game, about these next two games, we would say, that we're going to talk about. And we'll go into it. And Fede, going into it, I mean, the first game, obviously, is Peru. Peru, a team that had qualified to the last World Cup for the first time in 36 years, finished as runners-up in the Copa America, losing only to the host Brazil in the final. They are a team that have been so accustomed to playing under Ricardo Gareca, and as Ralph had mentioned, there are a bit of advantages that we're having at the moment. We see a couple injuries, a couple players that might be missing. Just looking at it real quick, we might see players like Edison Flores, Yori Reina, Alexander Cayens, all of them who will also play in the United States, which was an issue actually heading into these qualifiers about whether or not MLS clubs will be willing to send their players. They actually did that for our two players, Caco Romero of the Red Bulls and Gaston Jimenez of Chicago Fire. But we see a lot of injuries that we're seeing for Peru. You would say, or at least the absences that we're seeing, you would say that it kind of is a good moment for Paraguay at the moment, especially as we talk. And kind of like Ralph had mentioned, there's no significant injuries as of yet. We had one positive COVID test from Jorge Morel that left the squad. A bit unfortunate that he didn't have the chance to do it. But ultimately, signs look very good for Paraguay's debut against Peru on Thursday.
Yeah, maybe even have an advantage, right? With all of this happening in Peru, I see that their goalkeeper is always the same, is Galese. Their defense is always the same. Their midfield is always the same. They have trouble with their strikers. We'll see if that changes the game plan for Berizzo heading into this first matchup. But mainly when we talk about Peru, I take my hat off, respect to them. They've done a great job these last couple of years. Gareca, he's become an idol for them, and maybe even they even took our place in the last World Cup. I'm happy for them because it was a national cause for them. But I want some revenge because of what happened last time we played against them. The same is going to happen with Venezuela, the second team we're going to go up against. But Peru, I believe, has a style of play. They always want to win all games. They're always hungry. I think that's something that Gareca has put in everybody's mind. And I really like Peru, the way they play. They're very disciplined, and clearly they have that Gareca touch. He's very important, and I believe, in this team. And he's made even some players that before Gareca came, we didn't know about them. I think he made them grow so much. Some players are very important. I think Flores was a very important player ahead of this game. He even scored on the last time we saw him, but on us. But they lost him, and maybe they'll go for these young players that have been playing lately on the National League. They've been doing really well the last two calls up, but they haven't practiced lately, and Gareca had his team practically for a month. He was playing with Farfan up there, and Farfan had some problems with his knee also these last couple of days. So we don't really know what to expect of Peru. If we're going to talk about the strikers, right? Like I said, midfield and defensively wise, I think they are very strong, and we're going to see what we usually see out of them. But much respect to them overall, because of what they've done and because they were on the last World Cup, we weren't. But this is a new journey. This is starting from zero, and I hope Paraguay hits it big on the first match.
I just wanted to point out, like, the head-to-head against Peru. They haven't had so much. Paraguay hasn't had so much luck against Peru, and I wonder if it's not just the same team that you were talking about, Fede. I wonder if there's something more to it, because it goes all the way back to 2015. I think the only one the Paraguay won was it looks like it was in sorry. Well, anyways, they had like one game.
I think it was in Luque in 2014. It's like the last time they won against Peru.
Right. So there's got to be something more to it than just the same team. I don't know what it could be. I don't know if Fede, Raf, Roberto can answer that, but there's got to be a change, I guess, in our team that we should be doing, especially against Peru, right?
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the mentality. I think these last couple of times we faced them. We faced Venezuela, which are teams that have grown. Their players are playing, a lot of them in Europe, a lot of them in the MLS, like Roberto said. They place those players also on very important leagues for them to grow. But we need to get that place back mainly, and we need to have those 3 points to get to the World Cup, especially when we play against them here. And the first match is going to be against Peru here, and we have to get that home advantage. We have to get the 3 points at home. I think that's going to be key on this first match. But what's happened on the last years, I want to erase all of that because there were different coaches, different ways of playing. I really want to see this Berizzo play a winning football from this first game. I want to even erase those friendly games because we didn't do that well either there. I hope the journey begins now with this match that's going to be in the Defensores del Chaco. But I don't know what Ralph thinks about it.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting points is that Peru has been on like an upward curve, while Paraguay has kind of been on that downward since 2010, 2011. Peru obviously qualifying for the World Cup for the first time in over 30 years or something in 2018. But what I remember from the game, I was at Defensores del Chaco when they lost 4-1, which is the only time Paraguay has lost a home World Cup qualifier against Peru. And I remember that day was the transitions. So the transitions from defense to attack by Peru was just too quick for us to stop them. It was one of those games that just in midfield, suddenly the ball was just moving quickly. Our defense couldn't recuperate, and we were hammered basically 4-1. So I think what we'll hope now is some of that experience those guys have, because people like Gustavo Gomez, and maybe if he plays with Alonso or plays with Balbuena, obviously they've gained that experience in the last 4 years. And what we'll see now is, I think, a team that's hopefully built better to be able to stop those transitions. And then what we could do is do something like we did in 2012, which I also remember that game when I think we won 1-0. Pablo Aguilar scored the only goal. It was like a very tense game, very tight, and we won from a set piece. And I'm happy if we win like that on Thursday for sure.
I think you all bring up good points. I think certainly you need to, and Ralph, it's kind of great that you mentioned that Paraguay are going to kick off a World Cup qualifier process for the first time since 1989. Just doing a bit of digging as well. Paraguay had never lost an opener at home in a World Cup qualifier. So history would side Paraguay, you would say, but ultimately records have to be broken, as obviously Peru demonstrated back in 2016. But yeah, I think it's a good point. I think we obviously are a different side, and Peru, even though they have maintained the base of their players, the ones that will come to Asuncion on Thursday night will also be different. So it really will be a statement to prove. And obviously, Maria, you mentioned in the beginning, it's a marathon, 18 games, 9 home, 9 away. You're not going to be assured of qualifying for the World Cup just by winning your first 2 games. I mean, we saw that with Ecuador, actually, that when they went unbeaten for the first few games and they just fell down a cliff. So it's going to be a long process, but ultimately it's important to always start off with the win, and certainly they have high hopes. I think everyone can feel confident on the team, and looking at some of the players that we have that are able to stop that transition that Gareca is proving, that will hopefully lead to a tight game. And certainly, of course, we have to mention the other guys that will be playing after this game. Venezuela, another side that are on the up. I mean, they've never qualified for a World Cup ever, but this isn't to say that they don't have talented players, very young talented players at their disposal. You look at Fariñas in goal. You look at obviously, Salomon Rondon won't be there because of his restrictions from the Chinese government that wouldn't allow him to travel. But you still have players like Soltedo that plays at Santos, Jefferson Savarino. The base of a squad that had went to the U20 World Cup final, which lost to England about 3 years ago. So this is also a side that historically we've always been good about, but history has changed. And Ralph, going to you on this one, they are a side that we have to watch out for. But I think you can ultimately say really that with them and Peru, that Paraguay are a side that, especially when you look at talent and just like as a whole collective unit, they are similarly equal in terms of when they do match up in those first 2 games, especially for now mentioning Venezuela.
Yeah, I think so. I think the difference there is again, even Paraguay have a bit more experience. We're talking about that with Peru, but also against Venezuela. I mean, it's a very young team, like you're mentioning. I think the last qualifier there was we won 1-0. Delis Gonzalez was very tight. This is going to be a difficult trip, I would suggest, because Paraguay have to go to Caracas, the capital, but then they have to take, I think, by land, they're going to Mérida, where you play at, it's not altitude like the altitudes of Bolivia, Peru, Colombia, but it's still, slightly a bit higher. So it's going to be a tiring journey. Obviously, it will come on the back of the Peru game, so there'll already be some fatigue there. So I think it's going to be a tough trip. In terms of what I think we'll see from Berizzo, I'm sure he's probably thinking of maybe a 4-3-3, something more attacking against Peru. I would suggest against Venezuela, he's going to look to dig in a bit and try and wear them down and hit them on the counterattack. Maybe we'll see dropping an extra body even into defense, because he's picked a lot of central defenders. So we would suggest that maybe he'll look for a line of 3 or a line of 5, however you want to look at it. I think that's a game that's a really good test for Paraguay in terms of how we can do with that mentality of the 2 games, because it's a really tough thing for. I'm trying to think for people who are in the US, maybe okay, it's even further than going from the East Coast to the West Coast. These are huge distances they have to travel in like 4 days. It's nothing like the European qualifiers, because all of Europe you can get across very quickly. The travel is not as luxurious as for the European players again, so this takes a lot more toll on the players. So that's something to really think about again with this Paraguay squad, which is mostly younger players, for them to have some of that experience and have that mentality to be able to dig in this tough, what will be a tough game against Venezuela coming so soon after Peru.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be tough. I mean, guys, Fede and Maria, I mean, how do you assess this second game that we're going to play and having to travel those long distances, as Ralph said, against a Venezuela side that obviously should not be underestimated one bit?
Yeah, I think that is going to be a problem. It is a problem on the preview, that long trip, and it probably is on the head. It's on somebody's mind how he's going to strategy-wise do with this second match, especially. I think it depends a lot on the first game. If we have a good result on the first game, if we have a win, then you can change a lot of the players, especially if the team doesn't work that much, or as much as Berizzo is waiting for the team to work. On the first match, I like to see the starting team repeat itself, so the players built up confidence, and so we know what to expect. But with the long trip ahead of us, it's very difficult for the 11 players to repeat. We have to remind people that it's going to be a different qualification due to the VAR, due to the video assistant referee doing its appearance here. Also, we're South Americans, we're very different than the Europeans. There's a lot of things that the refs are going to have to look into. We'll see how big of an impact the VAR is going to have also in these matches. And the other thing is the 5 subs, the 5 changes that our coaches can also make during these matches. And I think for the strategy, having fresh players on those last minutes might be good also, and even to give some rest to those players that you actually want to put on the second match also. So you have to put all of that into the same bag into preparing these 2 matches that are coming up.
Yeah, I think that Venezuela is one of those teams that we shouldn't underestimate. I think you said that as well, Roberto. And it's one of those teams as well that kind of catches you out of nowhere, especially Paraguay. But they have always, as far as I could have seen in their past results, it was always a low scoring game. So I think Paraguay needs to attack more. They need to, Berizzo should be able to play more attacking, a 4-3-3, like Ralph said. But it shouldn't be like last time. We should have learned our lessons and make the appropriate changes, especially now with a better and younger team.
Yeah, I think. Yep. Go ahead, Fede.
No, I just wanted to mention, just in case people don't know, Venezuela has a new coach. Dudamel is not there anymore. They have a Portuguese coach. This coach has not had time to work with the players. He hasn't had one single official match. And this is an advantage, I believe, for Paraguay. The Venezuelan players don't know their coach. Their coach hasn't installed the idea, their playing style yet. So I don't know if we're going to get the best Venezuela on the second match. We'll see how they do on the first match. But I don't really know what to expect out of this Venezuela now. Huh?
Yeah, and I think it's a good factor that we will hopefully get the chance to see Venezuela. They play Colombia, actually, in their first game. Obviously, a huge test for both sides, given it's also a rivalry. And yeah, I agree. I think it's always a positive feeling to use that kind of advantage, as you said, Fede, to use the 5 subs and knowing the type of depth that we have. And now we're getting into what we're going to look at, who's going to play on the pitch. There are a lot of players to use. I think ultimately the depth will be a huge factor, not just for us, but I think for all the national teams and how they perform. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But heading into what we probably will see on Thursday, and maybe if we see it repeat on Tuesday as well, are the lineups. I mean, Fede, will go to you on this one, because this was something that we've had some good news, as we said, that of players that are not getting injured. All of them have arrived without any issues. No one was blocking them. No one was injured. They were able to arrive into the country. They're all now in the country at Ipané, at the training grounds over there in Paraguay. But the one doubt that had come about over the last few days, and ultimately I think it will possibly be a game time decision, maybe 50-50, is Gatito Fernandez starting in goal. I think we can all agree on that he is going to be the starting goalkeeper. I think he's the one that has an advantage over an Anthony Silva that hasn't played in so many months, and Geraldo Ortiz that has done well at Once Caldas, but also doesn't have that experience as well. But Fede, what's the latest in Paraguay right now, and do we see Gatito starting at the Defensor del Chaco on Thursday?
Well, first of all, it's been a really weird week, different, with this bubble system, with the players coming in, kind of lonely. Welcome, a cold welcome here in the country, getting in a bus and driven right to the concentration camp where everybody's waiting for them. There's been problems in the sense that you can't share the tereré like we were talking last time. There's no barbecue on the preview. Some customs that the players are used to. It kind of changes the preview, not to see the relatives, not to see their family members. They're all locked up in there. We'll see how that changes also their heads towards this game. But if we're going to talk about the starting lineup, we have to talk about good news. Junior Fernandez has been tested in these last couple of hours. They gave him an intense practice, and he responded very well. The knee is okay, and the information that I have is that he will play, that he is ready to play, that he was waiting these last couple of matches with Botafogo, that he was actually already well to play, but he decided to wait, like Bobadilla also did with Guarani. He had some problems also, and he was waiting to get to this stage, to this date, to be available for Berizzo for the first match against Peru also. And if we look at the defense, I think the discussions start right there, because on the right side, I believe Juan Escobar is gonna make the starting lineup, because mainly Ivan Pires didn't make it. I think that's probably was for him due to Berizzo and because of all the times that he's been using them. But I believe Juan Escobar is our guy there. Just to start it off, he's been playing awesome in Cruz Azul. We talked about that also in previous episodes. I think he's the guy for that spot. I don't know if anybody thinks otherwise, but Robert Rojas hasn't played yet in River, so I don't see anybody else getting a chance in that spot.
I would say I would kind of disagree with you, Fede. I think either Valbuena or Alonso could play alongside Gomez and make it work there. That's just my opinion. But I mean, it could work too.
Yeah, I think it's important as well, and it's actually an interesting thought. Because of the lack of fullbacks, I think Paraguay only has like one natural right back at on this team, and only a few left backs with Arzamendia and Blas Riveros. You start to think, does Berizzo go with the amount of center backs that we have? Is it better to use a back three? I mean, it's not something that Paraguay have been accustomed to for various years, but it could be a possibility. I mean, looking at the depth that they have, it could be a possibility. So you could have Gomez and Valbuena and Alonso playing in the back, three great defenders that have been consistent at their clubs as of recent. But no, I mean, do you think that's the right idea to approach this first game against Peru, or should we keep with the back four and utilize left backs and right backs like we've used?
I don't know if it's the best match to put all the big guys back there. Peru, Venezuela have really fast players, not that big players. So we'll see if Berizzo goes again with Valbuena. Valbuena has been playing lately in West Ham. He's a captain there. I think they're all leaders. If you talk about Junior Alonso, he was a captain in the under-20. We talk about Gustavo Gomez. His leadership is you can see it in every practice, and Valbuena has some of that also. He's won his place, but I don't know if he's been able to keep that place, and Junior Alonso is doing great in Brazil with his new team. So I think he's also ready. That's a place in the center back that where Berizzo is probably having a headache. He has really good players, and he just needs to make the decision. We'll see what happens on the left side, because we have a player that's been doing well in Europe, or he started doing well, like Blas on the matches that he put this jersey on. He did very well also. But then you have Arzamendia, which is this young player that just won another championship with Cerro Porteño. He's one of the players to be called the future of this team. But lately he's been on the last Copa America. So I think he's just grown, and I think he's also a player to follow in this process that's about to start. That defense has to be very strong for us. Along the story, we've always had a strong defense, and we need to get back to that also.
Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things you have with the with the difference between Junior Alonso and Balbuena is, of course, Alonso is left-footed, Balbuena right-footed. So then you have the, does he want that preference of having centre backs with different feet to then help them play the ball out from the back, which is obviously a style that he enjoys. And then with the Riveros and Arzamendi, I still think Arzamendi is going to win it based on his Copa America last year. I think that Copa America performance has probably given Berizzo faith that he can do the job defensively. For sure, I would say Blas is a better player going forward. I mean, he's fast, he's very quick, crossing, but maybe thinking on the defensive side, he might want to prefer Arzamendi for this first game. I don't know what you guys are thinking about in the middle, because I would assume what Berizzo really wants to ensure is to not have that problem we had of losing the ball quickly in that 4-1 we were talking about, and making sure we have players that can really keep possession and circulate around the middle. So I know Fede was talking about Gaston Jimenez, who's in Chicago Fire. Some of the things we're hearing from training today is that he could be the player, one of the players picked in that starting 11, which would suggest that he really wants somebody who's good at keeping the ball and holding the ball in possession. I don't know what thoughts you guys have. It sounds from what we were talking about, this 4-3-3, there'll be kind of three central players there.
I actually think that Richard Sanchez won his spot. I think he's going to be there in the midfield. Villasanti did great job in the friendlies. Also, I think he's one of the best players to understand the idea that Berizzo wants to put on this team. And if he puts on Gaston Jimenez, he's going to put all the pressure on this guy. He's 27 years old. He's not a youngster anymore, but people are going to look at him differently. You just came and now you're already on the starting team. Were you a favorite of the coach, or you really have the talent? He's going to have to respond to that question immediately. People are not going to be that patient with him. And then you have Andres Cubas. Cubas has done a really good job, and I think he is that player that can recover, get back balls for this team, and probably be that player that initiates the game also for us. I think Cubas might be in this team, but there's a difference there. Physically there is a difference between Gaston Jimenez and Andres Cubas, and so we'll see if Berizzo wants all three midfielders to be more defensive, or he actually maybe even puts an attacking midfielder in between those three guys.
It's funny that. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay. No, I was just saying. It's funny that you guys said about the Argentinian Paraguayans coming in now, and what would happen if they just get the starting position and they start this whole issue. And I honestly don't find it any issue at all. I think it's a great thing, and I love the fact that they chose Paraguay over Argentina. And it's just the risk that Berizzo is gonna have to take, regardless of what the country feels like or what other players might feel like. If you deserve the spot, you deserve the spot. There's nothing to it. So.
And I also was thinking about that same point, that the pressure won't be as high on them on Thursday because there's no fans. So it would have been another thing if they're playing in a full stadium and everyone's getting a bit nervous, expecting the win. But without fans, it gives them more of a chance to play some of that football without pressure, which is something we've also seen in the Premier League, by the way. I mean, the amount of goals that are being scored and the way teams are playing is slightly different, and we think that's without the fans, there's less pressure.
These guys left some others out. Piris da Mota. Nobody talks about Celso Ortiz right now. He's in the squad also, but nobody thinks that he's going to start the game because the times that he's been on the pitch, he hasn't responded well. He did play Copa America, but he hasn't stunned out of this team. So I think it's going to come out of those names that we've been talking about, Roberto.
Yeah, definitely. And I think ultimately it will also lead to the final positions that we have to figure out is the forward line. I think ultimately if it is suggested that we do see a 4-3-3, it will be dependent on how that 4-3-3 will be formatted. And obviously we needed to mention about Miguel Mirón. Certainly he is the so-called star player of the squad. I think ultimately the team would have to be revolved around him, given that he provides that kind of speed going forward and creativity. But the big question remains, where do you play him? Do you play him in his preferred position, playing as a 10, a DS, as a center attacking midfielder, or do you play him as a left winger, something that he's actually been doing under Berizzo in the friendlies and at the Copa America, where he's also demonstrated his strength. I mean, ultimately, it's very different than what he's doing at Newcastle, where he's usually playing on the right and having to track back more. But if he's more advanced, it would work best for him. I don't know what you guys think about that.
I agree. I think it'll be a tough decision for Berizzo, because he does prove that he does have strength in either of those. I think it would kind of depend more on where the other players feel more comfortable in, because regardless, Miguel can play better in attacking in the front. So, I mean, that would probably be best for him to do. But like you said, he's been playing on the right a little better under Berizzo. So we'll see. I think it'll depend a little more on the other players.
One thing I remember about him on the left is when he was first at Cerro Porteño, they were too scared to put him in the middle because he was still like a young kid and that kind of thing. And I remember he played on the left in that. I think they had that run to win the championship, and he was amazing playing there. I mean, he has that pace, and he has that kind of ability that if he's going to go one-on-one against a fullback, he's mostly going to beat them. So there is that positive there. And I think if he does that, then that gives you space to somebody like Dario Lescano, who might play in the middle, who's more of a kind of a poacher and your classic, kind of goal scorer looking for chances. So I think is certainly a possibility. But it'll really be interesting to see, like Maria says, who he lines up Almiron with, because depending on that style is where he'd be best suited to play.
I think they've been looking for Almiron's best teammate. He needs a partner there inside the pitch. I think Kaku is one of them. I don't know where to put in Kaku in this 4-3-3. That's my problem. But I think Kaku is one of those players that could really be very good. He could be the Batman and Robin with Almiron there. I think Almiron needs that. I thought he was going to get that out of the Romero brothers. I thought either Angel or Oscar. I think any of those two guys have the talent. They understand him also. They have the same style of playing. But, as the games went on, as you said, Roberto, Almiron became the star. And with everything that happened to him in Newcastle, being this player that went to Europe lately, that blew up in Atlanta also, it just fell on him. And I think he feels this jersey, but I think the pressure is on him also. I've heard, I was even talking to Berizzo once off the air about this, and he told me, when this guy has a bad game, he then cries on the locker room. He feels that pressure, and hopefully he starts making goals. Hopefully he feels that he can be that leader in the pitch, and hopefully he can lead this team to winning. Because if that doesn't come by quick, we're going to talk about something that we've been talking about. Where does Almiron best fit in this team? On the left side, on the middle, but mainly he just needs to work with the rest of the team. I don't think the pressure needs to be on this guy for him to do everything for Paraguay.
And ultimately, I think as well, and it's good that you mentioned pressure, because there was a promotional shirt that was made when the new shirt came out of him wearing the number 10, which is something that a lot of fans have asked for, actually, which had been previously occupied by Deris Gonzalez, who was obviously not on the squad. But yeah, it's the thing. Is the pressure going to be too much for him? I mean, ultimately, there is an advantage given that, in the last game at Newcastle, he didn't play. So we get a Miguel Almiron that's rejuvenated, that will definitely run at full pace towards the Peruvians and the Venezuelans if he goes to that second game. And that could be an advantage. But again, it's all going to be dependent on who will work best with him. Will it be obviously Lescano, who is that kind of poacher that's kind of getting another redemption, you would say. I think he ultimately was a player that had scored some goals under Ramon Diaz back at the last qualifying process. Now it's his time to prove it again that he wants to be the main striker, because there are options. Like you said, Raul Bobadilla is there. Antonio Sanabria, a player that, is playing in Europe and has done decently well, but hasn't had too much to demonstrate on the national team. And then again, is it Kaku? Is it Brian Samulio from Turkey? Another player that's starting to get recognition by Berizzo and is getting consistent playing minutes and is doing well from what we've seen. He's another one. So I think ultimately, going full circle on Almiron, he kind of has to be that kind of leader as well. I think the whole team has to be a bunch of leaders as well. But when you have that kind of pressure of, playing in the Premier League, where the best league in the world, and you have to toughen it out and then to demonstrate on the national team, it can get to you. So ultimately, we have to see the best Almiron. And ultimately, if we do see the best Almiron, I think that can obviously lead to significant results in these next two games. I don't know what you guys think to close it off here.
I just hope it works out for the best.
Definitely.
And that we win.
Oh, for sure. And going to that to close it off, it's time for the big prediction time, guys. Yes. This will be very interesting. Two games. Ralph, you had mentioned beforehand, and we'll go to you first on this one. You had mentioned historically Paraguay have had a good record between both of these two teams in the scenario that they're in. At home at Peru, they've only lost once in that 4-1 win, but ultimately before that, a so-called perfect record. But they've also lost their last 5 between them, and it's going to be a big one to watch out for. And then Venezuela, a similar record away. Actually, I think they have the same record that Paraguay has at home with Peru that they have away to Venezuela. So history sides Paraguay on this one. How do you see these two games panning out between Peru and Venezuela?
I can't believe you came to me first. All the pressure's on me now. I was checking the betting markets today to see who do the bookmakers make favorites of Paraguay and Peru, and actually it is Paraguay, which I was kind of surprised by. I would have thought, looking at Peru's kind of recent record, maybe they'd be sneaky favorites. I don't want to be like a party pooper, but I think from the two games, Paraguay will take 4 points. And I'm suggesting they will draw the opener with Peru and they'll snatch a victory in Venezuela. But 4 points. Hold me to the 4 points more than the two results.
We'll write this all down just to see how right and hopefully not as wrong as well. But Maria, you as well. You're next. How do you see these two games panning out?
I'm going to be a little more optimistic like I've always been in my whole life. And I'm going to go for 2 wins. But I'll make it a little tough, and I'll say 1-0 and 1-0 for both games.
Easy as it can be, 1-0 and 1-0, but ultimately 6 points. Fede, ultimately, I think you're going to have a great perspective on this one, given that you're in the country and, fans are also just as maybe excited or pessimistic on this one. But how do you see Eduardo Berizzo's team managing these first 2 games against Peru and Venezuela?
It's very hard to get away from the heart, to get away from the atmosphere that we're living here in Paraguay. I haven't liked this team yet. I think Berizzo is still working on the idea. He doesn't have a starting 11 yet. I'd be happy if we get 1 win out of these 2 games, and I think it'd be against Venezuela. I think Venezuela is a weaker team. Peru has almost everything. They don't have the strikers, but they do have their way of playing, and they're going to be a very tough team for the first match. I would have liked to play them on the second match, not on the first match. But, this is just how things are. And with 3 points, I would be happy. We have games again in November. Think about them then. And hopefully be strong at home. Hopefully this team gives us that sense that the team is growing, that the Berizzo idea is growing in them, and that the players that are coming in, they don't feel the weight of the situation. They don't feel the weight of the jersey, and they're going to respond on the hard times also, because this is one of the toughest qualification process that we see around the world. South America is very tough. Ralph said it. There's a lot of good matches coming up. We see Chile versus Uruguay, and that's a very hard prediction right there. But I think with 3 points, I'll be really happy after these 2 matches.
So from just to clear it off, you would say a win for Venezuela and maybe a loss to Peru in the first game, or a draw, just to make sure we're all accurate on it.
Want to draw. You want to draw. I want to win, but I don't see it very good against Peru. We haven't done well lately against them, and lately they have the formula for us against us actually. But yeah, with 3 points, I'll be happy.
Sounds good, and that leaves me. These are two tough games. I think obviously Peru are a side that had been so consistent and obviously are familiar under Ricardo Gareca. I mean, certainly that can also favor into ours, and for one reason, the lack of significant players that are not going to be playing. I mean, this isn't to say that Peru are slightly weakened at the most, but again, you know what? I think I'm going to feel optimistic on this one. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think ultimately, Paraguay will get the result. I think history, I like to put the history factor on them. I know things can change and whatnot, but I'm going to go with the bookies. Like Ralph said, I think Paraguay do it, but I don't think they do it convincingly. I think they will have some struggles. I think ultimately, if they will get the early goal or something like that, then I think they might have to be as defensively solid against a side that will move in transition. Certainly that's not the way that they want it to be, but I think for a game like this where, trying to ease the odds, the fears and to feel more relaxed in what is going to be a long process, I think they get the result in Peru, against Peru and in Asunción. And then when they travel to Mérida against Venezuela, I still think they also will remain perfect. I think they will get another result there. I believe that they will win this game. Venezuela are a side that you said, Fede, a new coach. They won't have their main striker in Salomon Rondon. But and then learning about what the coach does, he's kind of defensively dull, likes to play long balls, and maybe that could work for our factors as a team that wants to go into transition and move with the ball into pressure up high. I think it might be tight as well. I think I see, similar to what Maria says, I think I do see 2-1-0 results, but ultimately Paraguay will come out of these two games with the 6 points. Different opinions. I think ultimately all of us hope for the best, and we would like to obviously have Ralph and Fede be wrong and get the 6 points to start off World Cup qualification. But, guys, just any last thoughts heading into these first two games? I'm excited. It's getting there. You can also feel nervous as well, but I think from what my money's worth, this generation of players, you can feel confident. Again, questions have to be made about what Berizzo's best side is and not having that kind of formula of a starting 11, but there is something out there, and it could be worked out well if they're able to get two positive results against Peru and Venezuela.
There's just something exciting about the team, the atmosphere, even through the circumstances that Paraguay and the entire world is going through. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but at least I think it's the first time that I felt more excited about seeing a younger team like the one that we have right now. So, we'll suffer a little bit for sure, like we always have, but we'll get there. It's still some time to get to, but we'll get there.
Adelante Albiroca, as the song goes. I'll post that on Twitter after for people to hear that song, because I always start thinking of that song in my head when the bus is going through Mercado Cuatro. Maybe it's not going to do it this time. Like the bus classically goes through one of the biggest markets in Asunción, and to get to the stadium, they might not do that this time, just to avoid crowds in the streets. But all of that stuff, you start thinking, you get the goosebumps. We're 48 hours away and I'm already there, so I'm definitely excited about it.
I just hope that the group gets stronger with the teams, with the games ahead of them. I just hope this team keeps growing. I'm so happy with the career individually that the guys are having, the ones that we have on the national team, and all the guys that are left out of the national team that can also come eventually and give us good stuff. We didn't mention Derlis Gonzalez, but I think Derlis was another player that was going to be probably on the starting 11 because of all the games that he's played, because he's also a player that's always been there for the national team. So we got to play for those guys also. We got to play for Jorge Morel that lost his chance on this team too. So I hope they feel that. I hope they feel the team spirit and they gave us that, because I think all all countries need the happiness now. All countries are looking to go to the next World Cup, but hopefully it's our turn now.
It's been quite a long time. As I mentioned, 12 years since they last made it to a World Cup. Hopefully that what we see in Asunción on Thursday and in Venezuela on Tuesday and will end up as a positive result. And we'll obviously talk about that, hopefully in positive remarks heading into these two games. But yeah, guys, it's been great as always. Thank you again for joining us. So for Maria Britos, Ralph Hanna, Fede Perez, and myself, Roberto Rojas, thank you for tuning in to the World Cup preview show for La Avi Roja in their first two games to qualify for Qatar 2022. Thank you again. Speak to you soon.